This week on the Computer Chronicles, the final part of our special series on the European Technology Roundtable and Exhibition in Rome. We'll talk with Microsoft's Bill Gates about what it will take for the high-tech economy to bounce back. The Red Herring's Tony Perkins says with the Justice Department heat now off Microsoft, they are once again the big monster that everyone has to be afraid of. With Windows bundling more and more functionality into the operating system, is there still room for a software industry? Symantec CEO John Thompson says yes. What's the future for the bruised B2B internet companies? Commerce One's CEO Mark Hoffman says B2B is here to stay. And what will the Internet of the future look like? Marimba's chairman, Kim Palese, says the net will succeed when it disappears. The final part of our coverage of the ETRE conference coming up next on the Computer Chronicles. Computer Chronicles is brought to you by the Oracle Small Business Suite, one completely integrated application that helps make it easier to run your business, including accounting, sales and service, your web presence, and more. Additional funding is provided by PC to PC, the online migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one.
Just a few days ago, thousands of people were gathered here at St. Peter's Square at the Vatican in Rome, waiting to hear what the leader of the Catholic Church, Pope John Paul, had to say about the path to peace in the world. Well, at the very same time, just across town, in a hotel conference center, another large crowd was assembled, waiting to hear what the leaders of the high-tech industry had to say about the path to economic prosperity in the world.
None of that stuff is slowing down.
Bill Gates is perhaps the one industry leader whose words command the most attention. And during a satellite interview here at ETRE, Gates said that despite the naysayers, he is optimistic about the near-term future of the high-tech industry.
I'm personally quite excited about a lot of the things that happen over the next 2 years. And I'd say in order for there to actually be substantial growth, we'll need a combination of the economy getting back to a normal growth situation and some of the advances that drive new waves of both desktop and server purchasing. Some of those advances really need to get into place.
On the hardware side, the icon of success is Michael Dell, and he says there is good reason for Gates to be optimistic, especially as Microsoft NT continues to put pressure on the Unix solutions offered by rivals like Sun Microsystems.
There's no question that Windows is going to push Sun up into the higher end of Unix. I mean, certainly, they had a fantastic business in the telecom and .com space. And so I think they're being hit particularly hard by the decline among those customers. Nobody questions that they've got a good product. Most people don't also question that it's a very expensive product. So, that combination can work pretty well in an incredible boom. But we're seeing a lot of customers on the margin sort of flip over to Windows as opposed to Sun. And, some people say that the Sun's not going to burn out for 6 billion years. I think it might be a bit sooner.
But Bill Gates thinks the opportunities for growth go beyond just beating Sun. He says the majority of businesses still have not fully adapted to the digital age.
Businesses are still in the process of going digital. Even though there was all that hype over the last several years, if you look at corporations today, they are overwhelmingly still paper-driven. The way that order processing is done, the way that buying is done, the way that coordination is done. And so slowly but surely, companies are saying that with this new wave on the web, the so-called web services era that's enabled by XML, that they really can get the visibility they want for buying, for customer satisfaction through purely digital processes.
And that means software, especially the new XML-based software, which is driving the next generation of internet-based business solutions.
Now, some of the software that lets them connect up their applications to work that way, some of that software is just really coming out. And people are finding that the websites they built in such haste over the last 2 or 3 years, that the ability to add code to those, to scale those, really that's legacy software at this point because the tools weren't rich enough. And now some of these XML approaches are going to make it so much easier to build a traditional website, but now also to have it work in this XML web service fashion.
Another reason for Gates' optimism is the pending settlement with the Justice Department of the antitrust suit against Microsoft. But with the new XP operating system and XP applications now on the market, there is again concern that Microsoft may be too powerful.
I think it's pretty much established at this point that Bill Gates has successfully heeded the internet call. He has repositioned his company to be an internet company, but in the meantime, he's also become a game box company. He's become a media company. He's moving into the enterprise application business. So their tentacles are spreading farther than ever before. And so we would expect Microsoft to continue to be a dominant player.
Microsoft is still, on many levels, the ocean in which a lot of these people swim. And it is now such a core part of the infrastructure that everyone here is using. And Microsoft's intentions to extend its desktop operating system and office software monopolies to new areas, including fundamentally capturing control over the internet itself, it would be odd and foolish for people to ignore that.
I do think that after XP comes out, Windows XP, you'll see some, griping about it because it does build new things into the operating system that are, the same old Microsoft. I think they build a firewall into the operating system, things like that, where little bits and pieces of software that other people sell.
Symantec is the world's second largest consumer software company after Microsoft, and it may now be facing the same challenges as other smaller software companies. What do you do when Microsoft bundles your functionality into its operating system?
Well, we can't run in fear of what Microsoft might do. If you did that, then you wouldn't have a very comfortable life at all. We run in fear of our ability to execute on our own business plans. And if we do that, we'll stay one step ahead of Microsoft or anyone else who's thinking about entering this space.
Always the optimist, John Thompson sees a positive side to Microsoft moving into Symantec's traditional market space.
We think on the positive side, the fact that Microsoft would include remote control technology in their operating system certainly suggests that customers ought to have that. When they then go and evaluate what's available in the marketplace, they're likely to prove or pick something that's pretty strong, and we think ours is far stronger. The fact that in XP there is a firewall product is an acknowledgement that individual users need a personal firewall. Well, when the individual user goes to the market to look for the best firewall technology, they're likely to pick our product. And so we will continue to innovate in the face of Microsoft incorporating functionality into their operating systems.
But Microsoft does not seem worried about its software competitors, either on the application side or the operating system side. In fact, despite the availability of free Linux and free online application suites, Bill Gates concedes that Microsoft's biggest competitor these days is Microsoft.
The toughest free competitor that Microsoft has is actually our own installed base. That is, because we don't charge for our software, or you have to pay us on a usage basis or a yearly basis, that is, you buy Windows and you can use it forever, that to our customers is free. And so when they look at a new version of our software, they have to decide not only is the new feature worth the licensing cost, but is it worth the trouble of learning the new software, installing the new software, and all the things that go around that. And so, whenever we come out with something new, we are competing with something that to all the customers, it is absolutely free.
One of the new worries about Microsoft involves its recently launched Passport application, a way for users to have one master ID and password that could be used on all websites.
Well, Passport couldn't be a simpler idea. That is, as you go around to these different websites, you're asked to come up with a new name and a new password. And at least in my case, when I go back to different websites, I have to think, well, which name did I have to use here? Because the name I used in the other websites were taken. And which password do I use here? Is this the website that wants a long password or a short password? And that whole thing makes you far more reluctant to go out to different websites. Likewise, whenever you want to use a website, you find yourself filling in the same information again and again. Now, if we don't solve that, then instead of lots of merchants thriving on the web, there'll just be a few merchants where you've already entered that information, and you'll go and do everything with them.
Gates says there has to be some solution like Passport to make it easier for small businesses to compete on the internet.
And so to really have the internet fulfill this promise that lots of small business and a variety of businesses can come in and it's easy for you to do business with them, you've got to have a standard authentication approach where you can have one name and one password, you enter it once, any of the other information you want to give to websites you enter in once. Now this can be done in a way that you're totally in control, so that when you go to a website, if it requests any of that information, it's up to you to say, do you want your name, your email address, your credit card, whatever set of information to be sent along to that website.
But according to some critics, Passport is also a way for Microsoft to build an immense database of everyone's personal information. Gates says that is not the case.
And so this is an enabling technology that doesn't have a bias for one company or another company. It's likewise a set of information, just like keeping people's email like we do with our Hotmail capabilities, where you have to be very clear to people you're not going to go in and look at that information and use it for some other purpose. We've actually now explained exactly how we let corporations do the authentication as well, so that you can use your login name you have inside a corporation. We've explained how the root of trust in this is something that we've turned over to a standards process so that that can be managed in a key way. We've had all the privacy people audit exactly what we're doing with this. So the key to it is to get it to critical mass.
Microsoft's new initiatives in e-commerce are aimed not only at consumer sites, but also the so-called B2B sites where businesses sell to other businesses. And the leaders in the B2B space, like Commerce One, say they have learned something from the much maligned consumer e-commerce sites.
I think there's a lot to learn, actually, that it goes back to just some of the fundamentals of on the consumer side. I mean, user interfaces are important, ease of use. I mean, the same things are true in the B2B. As you expand the B2B world out to more and more participants in an organization, it's almost like dealing with a consumer. Is it easy to use? Is it intuitive? Can the person understand what you're trying to accomplish? All of those things become, very easy to find content, to find sites. All that stuff is applicable in the B2B world.
The B2B sector in general has taken a real pounding over the past year, with buyers, and especially suppliers, resisting the new internet sales model.
Suppliers are worried about being commoditized in this marketplace. And so there's been some resistance on the supplier side. But we're actually trying to build tools now that allow the supplier to become more individualistic, to present themselves and their ability more than just, here's this line item. This supplier is also capable of providing the following service, the following delivery, the following quality, all of those things that are important for a supplier to do, and that they can compete on more than just price.
One of the problems in the B2B market was the business model, in which B2B software vendors not only wanted to charge for their software, but also wanted a percentage of all sales that used their software. Bill Gates says that was a flawed model.
Most of what we're seeing is still the classic purchasing model, where people want to buy a piece of software and be able to use that software as much as they want. One of the other fallacies of the bubble was that people would use these intermediary markets, B2B markets, and instead of paying just a modest fee to get the software to let them do buying and selling, have that as a one-time fee, that people would like to have their transactions marked up. And so every kind of trade they did, buying supplies, selling things, would actually get marked up by a middleman. And that whole model, which was sort of a per transaction payment model, I think has been largely repudiated. Corporations don't want to take on that kind of a cost.
B2B has been most successful in specialized market situations. Buyers and sellers already have established relationships and where the industry itself controls the marketplace. One such success story is an online marketplace for auto manufacturers called Covisint. One of its founders is General Motors.
GM historically was very vertically oriented. You know, I think it bought sand to make glass, you know, and you know, it just was so vertically oriented. And in this, the new way it wants to do business is much more of a distributed, outsourced business. And so it wants to become more flexible. You know, how can I focus more on design and component assembly? How can I add more services to the car, like internet services to the car, because they have higher value. And so I think that's not only happening at GM, it's happening at many, many companies around the world. And they're just trying to say, how do I get my focus on my core, outsource the rest, and that will be where I do my value creation.
Indeed, the staid auto industry is trying to adopt the supply chain strategies developed by new computer industry leaders like Dell and Cisco.
We went out to Cisco Systems, which a lot of people don't realize is the largest e-commerce company in the world. They are selling literally billions of dollars worth of networking equipment automatically over the internet. Today, when you analyze those transactions, believe it or not, many of those transactions are not involving a single Cisco employee. So what that means is, generally when people are reordering equipment, they go onto Cisco's website, they place the order, that order goes automatically out to the contract manufacturer. That manufacturer builds that networking equipment and sends it to the customer. And the only thing that Cisco's knows is they wake up in the morning, check their website, and see that they've sold, you know, millions of dollars that night automatically over the web.
You know, the car companies are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to say, let me deliver a individually designed car that was designed over the internet, delivered in 10 days. And quite frankly, today they can't do that, you know, because their supply chains are so rigid, so inflexible, that they can see if they have a car in inventory that exactly matches what you did and ship you that car, but that's not individual creation of that car. And so they're trying to do a lot what happened in the PC business, you know, less choice maybe, but you know, more get your components outside the company and just assemble those components quickly into the final assembly and ship that to a customer.
As soon as the rest of the business world understands what the Ciscos and Dells are doing to automate their back ends of their operations so that they are able to automatically buy and sell things without any human intervention, then people are going to understand, oh my God, unless I Ciscoize my company or Dellize my company, I'm going to be, you know, I'm not going to be competitive in the future.
So the overall view here at ETRE was that despite some of the early B2B failures, the business-to-business part of the internet will eventually thrive.
The large companies and small companies alike have only one way to go: online. It will save a lot of money. It will save them a lot of documentation problems. It will save them a lot of logistics nightmare. It will save them a lot of supplier disinformation or misinformation. All those things are going to happen. They're happening, like everything else, at a slower pace than expected.
An ETRE conference is all about predicting the future. Where will the high-tech economy go, and what will be the new trends in technology? We asked many of the industry leaders here at ETRE to look into their crystal ball and paint a picture of the next few years in high-tech. For Bill Gates, the most exciting new technology market of the future will be speech recognition.
In fact, speech recognition software is far better today than it was 3 or 4 years ago. But unfortunately, this is a very interesting market where once you cross over a threshold of reliability where people are very comfortable with it, then you'll have a very large size market. But as long as you're just approaching that threshold, the total market is extremely small. It's a very specialized market that's, say, a 10,000th of the general market. And so everybody dreams of that general market, but until you get to that magic point where it's extremely reliable, you don't really have something that's ready for prime time.
For Bill Gates, the other big new growth market will be the business-oriented information appliance in the form of a wireless computing tablet.
We've really just scratched the surface with what we're doing for knowledge workers today. One of the big step advances will be when we get the elements to come together, wireless networking, tablet-type computers, where you literally can carry around a device that's satisfactory for reading, satisfactory for note-taking. That kind of advance means that you won't have this big divide between your paper-based information and your digital information. And that's been a bit of a holy grail. People have talked about it for a long time. It's taken a decade of work on the software pieces and the hardware pieces, whether it's the batteries or the networks, to now say that the critical mass is there to really drive a whole new wave of expectation of what you get out of these personal productivity devices.
For Michael Dell, the future is not about technology itself, but about smarter ways to sell technology. He sees IBM, Compaq, and HP eventually copying his direct selling model.
For the most part, many of them underestimated how broadly accepted the direct relationship would become. And so if you go back and look, 10 years ago, they sort of thought it would be a niche. And that sort of lack of understanding of exactly what it was caused them not to treat it very seriously, even though for the last 10 years, they have been in some form or another trying to copy the direct model.
And what about the next generation internet? Tony Perkins of the Red Herring says one thing is for sure: the business will quadruple in the next few years as users migrate from PCs to other devices.
There are twice as many people on this planet that own cell phones than own PCs. And clearly, in the next couple of years, a large majority of those cell phones are going to end up being internet enabled. And so we're going to see, in our view at Red Herring, the number of people surfing the internet going from 500 million to 2 billion, and those new numbers will largely come from people that own cell phones, that hook their TV to the internet, and their stereos, and engage in other kind of internet services. So I think what we have to do going forward is look at internet devices and not just PCs. Now, of course, PCs are going to continue to be important, but again, I just don't see them as the center of the IT universe in the same sense they have been for the last 20 years.
Marimba's Kim Palese predicts the internet will disappear in a way, and we'll eventually just stop talking about it.
The major change is that people will stop talking about the internet because it will become so much a part of our lives, like plugging into a wall socket or turning on a water faucet. It'll just become, as John Doerr calls it, the Evernet. It's always on, it's always there, everything's connected. There's software and intelligence in every everyday object that we use, and we'll just assume that the internet is part of the basic sort of plumbing of our lives that surrounds us. We'll stop talking about it and we'll stop thinking about it, and that's when I think we'll know we've succeeded.
Dan Gilmore says the most important change coming to the internet is a totally new operating system that will improve network security.
There is a monster security problem, but there are also some security solutions. Kim Palese, at a panel I was moderating yesterday, made a very fundamental point, which is that the operating systems that we use on personal computers were not designed for public networks. And until we get a whole new generation of core software that is designed to be part of public networks, this problem is going to be there, and that we have to move ahead.
When it comes to far-out new technologies, venture capitalist Tim Draper says, pay attention to nanotechnology.
In nanotechnology, you're dealing with things that are a billionth of a meter, which is like 1/10,000th of a human hair in size. And some very weird things happen down there. That's at the atomic level. And what's interesting is that we can actually see those things happening now, and that can create whole new industries. And we're just at the very beginning of those new industries.
And if you want that one magic buzzword, the 21st century version of plastics, Tim Draper says the word is phosistor.
Phosistor is a new optical technology, and what they can actually do is through optics, we've created new optical switches. It's similar to the beginning of the transistor, where the transistor became a semiconductor. The phosistor is a company that is actually taking the photons and converting them to an integrated circuit.
And finally, perhaps the most honest prediction of the high-tech future came from Tony Perkins.
There's a little bit of a situation where the compass wheel is spinning, and we knew and still believe, I think, that the internet is a huge commercial phenomenon, but what is the next chapter going to bring? You know, what is the next big thing? And I'm not sure there's more than a handful of people out there that really know what that's going to be.
For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Stuart Chaffee at the ETRE conference in Rome. Computer Chronicles is brought to you by the Oracle Small Business Suite, one completely integrated application that helps make it easier to run your business, including accounting, sales and service, your web presence, and more. Additional funding is provided by PC2PC, the online migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one.